Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as you can tell, we have a very, very special guest indeed. We are joined by stuntman and actor Brad Loree. Brad, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Samuel. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm very excited.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Um, you know, Again, and I'm sure you get this quite a lot. You're primarily known a lot for your stunt work, but as I would probably say, probably the biggest role that you're known for is playing Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a small, minor acting roles in other stuff, but this is the real feather in my cap.
Mhm. So I guess we'll get kind of right started into it. Um, for you, how does it feel portraying such an iconic horror character?
Well, Samuel, when I first got offered the job, I didn't realize what they were actually. I didn't have any clue what I was in for. Ken's the one that said, Brad, we're kind of like the Dracula and Frankenstein of our generation, and I never thought of it like that before. And I thought, he's right. And some other people, another buddy of mine who was kind of a photojournalist, he said, Brad, after being Michael Myers, it's like being a Playboy centerfold. That's what you'll be known for the rest of your life. And I said, really, honey? And but to answer your question, Samuel, I'll just tell you real quick. When I got the phone call to come in and meet the executives, I could have swore the production manager said to me that they were looking for a stunt double for Michael Myers. And I thought she was talking about Austin Powers because I hadn't seen the Halloween movie in almost 2 decades. So when I went in there and they said, yeah, Brad, you should work. The producer said, no, Brad, we might have to fly you down to LA to cast your head and all that to build the mask. I said, oh, I got to go all the way to LA just to double some hummy actor. And they said, no, you're not going to double the guy. You're going to be the guy. And as it happens, Samuel, the first Halloween movie was the one horror film that I think is pretty much a masterpiece of any genre. Like, as far as, it's not overly bloody, gory, and violent like the other films I'd seen, but you're on the edge of your seat because the guy's just so gosh darn creepy and methodical. It's just so you're just on the edge of your seat the whole movie. He's just so Anyway, it was a big deal. In answer to your question,
That's actually something. It's kind of brilliant that you mentioned that with what you said with what Ken Kersinger mentioned about how Jason and Michael Myers, our generation, is the Frankenstein and Dracula of the previous generation. That's actually a perfect analogy. Actually, that's brilliant.
absolutely it is.
So, do you remember? Obviously, I know it was quite a while ago, but do you remember what it was like on set and how it was kind of being amongst the cast that you were amongst?
Well, I kept to myself a lot, Samuel. I didn't hang out on set unless I had to be there because I'm kind of a lazy prick. But I just sat in my room. But I got to say that to a person, I've got nothing but love and admiration for everybody I worked with on that show. I just had so much fun. I heard stories that Busted was maybe not as punctual as he could have been. He had, I don't know what their deal with him because I know some of the uppers didn't speak quite as highly about Busta as I felt about him. But I just know that every morning when I saw him in the trailer, he gave me a very genuine, authentically huge bear hug. And I never saw anything unprofessional or untimely when we were on set together, working out the scenes. I just remember the rehearsing the scene where he's following me dressed as Michael Myers. When he goes off on his tirade, I could not keep it together. I had doubled over from laughter the first 2 or 3 takes. It was just so funny. Anyway. But no, I would like, because I just bonded with everybody, Ian Thomas, I hate those people with 3 names. I can never remember 2. The kid that was in American Pie movies, the one that I broke through the mirror to kill.
Oh, okay.
He and I really bonded. He didn't really have a big brother or even a father figure in his life, and what I was going to say is I wish I was still in contact with some of those people because I love Katie Sackhoff and I love Bianca. I'm really looking forward to supposedly we're going to see Jamie next year at a convention. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, it was a really, really, really special time, and it's just led into all, this podcast and just so much more. I've gotten to see so many. I've been to Europe so many times and been all over the States and places I would never have seen if it wasn't for the convention. And I knew nothing about conventions, and I was scared to death the first time I did one. But anyway.
Yeah. So in regards to the movie itself, I think, a lot of positive from Halloween Resurrection was actually your portrayal of Michael Myers. Can you kind of give us an insight of what you did to play that character? What did you feel you wanted to bring to the character?
Well, you see, in my memory, I just remembered that was what most creepy about him was his gait, the way he walked. And when I did it in the look-see with Rick Rosenthal, the director of the executives, he said, Brad, imagine that your upper body doesn't swing or move at all. It's like you're from the hips down, your legs are transporting the upper part of your body. And, when you watch Nick Castle, that's pretty much how he walks. His upper body doesn't swing his arms. He just kind of walks. And so I watched all the Halloween movies on VHS. I fast forwarded to all the Michael Myers scenes. But ultimately, I came back to the first one after watching all of them. And the one scene where he's walking from the house across the street, where she's in the house with the babysitting the kids, where she ends up stabbing him with, I think it was a knitting needle. Anyway, that particular walk was the one I tried to copy the most. And I've gotten a lot of props for my portrayal. Dick Warlock has trumpeted my performance. He surprisingly noticed that I had done what I had done with my eyes, because when I thought about what Michael Myers was, I likened him to a shark. He's like a shark that just swims and kills. He walks and kills. So whenever we had a medium shot or a close-up shot, Samuel, I would cross my eyes slightly to try and take the focus out of them, so they looked kind of dead. And so, and Dick Warlock noticed that. He said, Brad, what you did with your eyes made all the difference, And so, yeah, I've gotten a lot of compliments on the job that I did. I'm proud of that because I love that first Michael Myers film so much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was saying about, like I told you about Halloween Resurrection. If you read a lot of reviews about the movie, I mean, your portrayal is one of the biggest highlights from the movie, and I want to just say that what you did with the character was fantastic and it was really appreciated.
I appreciate that very much, Samuel. Thanks, man.
So as you mentioned before, about how you watched the previous movies, the previous Halloweens, did you have any particular one that you liked the most, or maybe some that you maybe weren't such a fan of?
Well, I think that Dick Warlock did a phenomenal job. I thought the sequel, I remember going to see the second Halloween film, and I thought this is one of the best sequels I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only number 2 because it was number 2. It could have been the original film and still been as great as almost as great as the first one. So I love Dick Warlock's portrayal. I watched the second one quite a bit to kind of emulate Dick too, because I really I thought he did an excellent job. Love him to death. But we were doing a Q&A one time with bunch of the Michaels, and they were asking all of us who we copied this and that. And Chris Duran said, "Oh, I never watched anybody else's performance. I just did it my way." And it's so obvious in the movie. H2O would have been is a good Halloween film. It could have been a great Halloween film, but I think Chris looks like a guy, like an ordinary guy that's dressed up like Michael Myers. He doesn't move like Michael Myers at any time in that film. He just looks like a guy who's dressed up for Halloween, chasing people around. And I always say that because I think I've said it to his face. I mean, I love the guy. He's a fantastic person, a great stunt guy and all that. But and hey, that was his choice. I think it was mistake, but I'm pretty sure they still spelled his name right on the check.
Exactly, that's it. Again, for me, as I wanted to kind of echo what you said about how across all horror movies, I do think Halloween 2 is probably one of the best sequels we've ever seen and probably will ever see again. For me, I know it kind of gets a bit of a bad rap. I wasn't the biggest fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, but it's just because that's not my style. Those movies aren't my style.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I watched the first Rob Zombie film, and I don't like any of Rob Zombie's films. I don't get the appeal at all to his music. I'm sure he's a genius, but I felt that they completely demystified and decryptified Michael Myers. It was always left up to the audience's imagination about why he was the way he was, why he was, exceptionally strong, and all this and that. He wasn't overly sized, so there was always that maybe the victim has a chance. But when he's 7 feet tall and he's whatever, I can't even remember what the backstory was. All it was a giant killer going around killing people that had no chance, and it was just nothing left up to the imagination. There was nothing mysterious about it. I didn't like it at all. I never watched the second one, but I talked to enough people that saw the first one and hated the second one, and I'll never watch it.
No, to be honest, again, I know there might be some people that listen to this that are a big fan of his work, and I do believe there is a core fan base for Rob. I mean, there must be, right? Because he's making a lot
absolutely.
of movies, to me, it's just not my style, and I think that's probably possibly the issue with those movies. But I have interviewed somebody that worked on Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, and he did really emphasize that Rob wanted to put his style on it, but wanted to pay his respects to the original movie. So I know he had the best of intentions, but I just don't think it quite worked out for him.
Well, he wanted to put his own stamp on it, like any good director. But he has, his movies are just over the top. They're just they're violence for the sole purpose of violence. It's
exactly.
And listen, they make movies like Hostel. There's a market for that. I guess there's people that like watching people get their eyeballs blowtorched out, but I'm not into it.
No, exactly.
I watch too much real true crime to be into those kind of movies. Anyway.
So obviously we I really definitely wanted to cover Halloween Resurrection, which I'm sure you probably cover in all your interviews that you do. But I also want to talk about a lot of work that you're also well known for in the stunt world. So obviously you're quite a well-known and a well-established stuntman. I spoke with Ken Kersinger last week, so he's told me some stories about the pair of you. So I wanted to talk to your side.
They're all
about
true, by the way. How did I get into stunts?
Yeah, how did you get into stunts?
Okay, Samuel, when I was 13 years old, I went saw this movie about this little Chinese kung fu fighter and fell in love with Bruce Lee all over again, because I didn't even realize when I first saw Fists of Fury, the movie Fists of Fury, I didn't realize that was Kato from the Green Hornet, who I was madly in love with when I was 6 years old. Anyway, I immediately begged my dad to let me sign up. We had one in the little town that I grew up, little hick town I grew up in. We had one karate school, and I joined that school, and that was June of 1974. The instructor was a green belt, 17-year-old high school student named Tony Morelli. Tony went on to become the WKA World Cruiserweight Kickboxing Champion, full-time contact karate kickboxing champion. And this is in the early 80s when the film industry was first starting to come to Vancouver. So Tony started doing some commercials, and then he started doing some stand-in work. Well, the local stunt group at the time, which was only half a dozen guys at that time, decided that, if we had a world champion in our group, we'd have a real, it'd make us just look that much more valid. So they took Tony on as a stunt guy, and because I was his protege, and he'd hire me whenever he could, Samuel, but because I so idolized the guy, I never imagined it. Never entered my head that I could be on the same. He's a working stunt guy. I might be a working extra, but I could never be on the same level as him. And then one day, I got hired for 2 days to do a fight scene in this prison on a show called Street Justice. It starred Carl Weathers. And after the second day, when the scene was wrapped, Ken Kersinger says to me, "Hey, Brad, this guy and I are going for a beer. Why don't you come across the street with us?" I said, "Okay." And while I was sitting there, Kenny put it on me. He said, "Brad, why aren't you doing this full time? You know, you're a size or two smaller than me. You're a size or two bigger than Tony. And the Americans are coming up here in droves. Our dollar's only 75 cents." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, Brad." He said, "If you go and get a pager and a headshot and a resume, I'll take you around and introduce you to everybody you need to meet." So I did that as fast as humanly possible, which I think he really admired and respected. And so, true to his word, for the next 3 years, he and another guy named Charles Andre and I were the three musketeers. If we weren't working, we were together from 9 in the morning till midnight, doing all sorts of stuff, all sorts of shenanigans. And so I like to say Tony has since passed away, but I like to say that Tony opened the door, but it was Ken Kersinger that kicked me through it. And really, you know, he's the guy that really set me up. And I never let him think I've forgotten that. You know, whenever I could buy the first round, or you know, whatever, you know, we go for lunch, I always try to get the check, because if it wasn't for Ken, I don't know where I'd be able to be today. And nothing against Ken, but it's not really his name. He's not innately philanthropic. Okay, let's just say that. I asked him one day, I says, "Ken, what was in your head that you decided to take me under your wing and do what you did for me? Because I don't see anybody else doing that in our business." He says, "Oh, Brad, you were just a good guy. You were Tony's best friend who I loved. And I just thought you'd be fun to hang around with." And, you know, we've had a little bit of fun, I have to say, Samuel.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I spoke with him, you know, he definitely spoke very highly of you. So as soon as we were talking about you, I was like, you know, yourself, it was somebody that I'd really love to get to speak with, because I knew, you know, he told me a lot about like the stories you two had and shared, and it seemed like you had quite a close relationship. So that was really cool.
Well, you know, Samuel, I met Ken back in 1983, dude. I mean, almost 40 years ago. I remember the first show I ever worked on was called Runaway with Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons and Cynthia Rhodes. Tony got me we were just driving in the background late at night. But we were all, there was the three of us. There was Ken, myself, and a guy named Ian Tracy, who's now an award-winning Canadian actor. He's worked all over the world. He works all the time. And but that was 1983, and all these years later, here we are, still doing it once in a while. So, and I just, you know, Jason, I don't know if Ken mentions this, but I don't know if you know the story that the producer of the Jason versus Freddy movie had seen me on set being interviewed, and he was very impressed with how much thought I put into the role of a guy wearing a mask with no dialogue. So he had me come in, and he wanted me to play Jason. But then he called Ronnie, the director, into the room, and the guy said, "Brad, you're perfect, except you're just not tall enough." So once I knew I didn't have the job, Samuel, I was praying that Ken would get it, you know, and they looked it up. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of guys. Kenny had interviewed, though, as the stunt coordinator. So somehow they came back around to Kenny. And then when Kenny got the job, I was just over the moon, you know. And, you know, he's the one guy I can't be envious of, that his movie was a bigger film and, you know, it was a crossover film, all that stuff, because he's the guy that got me in the business. So it's all his fault I'm here today. So anyway, my point is, I just jump for joy whenever Kenny and I get invited to the same convention or the same events and whatnot. And actually, this Saturday, we're all going to the Commodore Ballroom, which is one of Vancouver's oldest venues. It's got a hair insulated floor. Our stunt group, Stunts Canada, is putting on a 50th anniversary party. That's now the 52nd, because we had to wait 2 years because of COVID.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our founder and original legend, Alan Street, the founder of Stunts Canada, passed away in 2010. But Yeah, it's a really big shindig. We're all dressed up in. I'm renting a tux, and the
Wow.
mayor's coming. The police, the chief of the police is supposed to come, and it's just going to be a big soiree. It's $200 a ticket. It's ridiculous, but anyway,
Wow.
we're doing that this Saturday, so I'll see Ken at that. Yeah,
That's
I have
amazing. I
more
think that,
stories. Yeah,
yeah, you know, I think that'd be a lot of fun. That'd be amazing.
I might have to get a haircut though.
Uh, I need to get one too, so it's fine. um, so in regards to your stunts, you know, I know over the years you must have done an obscene amount of stunts and some crazy ideas. Do you remember any particular stunts that really stick out in your head the most?
I get that question a lot, and I have my I want to say stock answer. A low budget show called Mantis, where the guy was an African American scientist, a paraplegic scientist by day and a crime fighter by night. And they needed this bad guy, this sort of alien dude, to be doubled. And Ken was supposed to do it, but he had bad knees from his football injuries from university, so he passed on it because what it was is doubling the guy. I had to run and jump through an 8 foot by 8 foot window from the third story of the building, which is no big deal because they had an airbag down below. But the second floor below had a balcony that jutted out from the facade of the building that was about 14, 15 feet long and had big concrete railings on it. And if you landed short, well, it was the only time the stunt coordinator ever asked me during the rehearsal, Brad, do you have any allergies that we should know about? And Brad, if you fall short, don't try to save yourself by staying short. Try and get into the bags and boxes. Like, don't,
Wow.
you'll get more. He said, I don't think it'll kill you, but you're going to be pretty messed up. And that's all good and fine, because on the rehearsal, it was just a ramp, big open window. You had to jump out into the sky, which is kind of freaky, before you could see the airbag. Like, you had to commit to jumping before you could see your landing. But and then on the day, Samuel, they had the glass in there. Now it's an 8 foot tempered piece of glass that they have knockers on. It's these little pneumatic electrically charged bolts that shoot into the glass and break it for you with two guys on the button. But as big as it was, it's still heavy and it can slow you up. The worst part was now they've lit this room with all these lighting flags that are now in the middle of my runway for the first half. So I had to run along the edge of the runway before I could get to the middle. So that kind of slowed me down. Then the wardrobe comes. Now I've got a cape and this big gun rack on my back. So that's slowing me down. And then worst of all, because Kenny had gone for the wardrobe fitting and then decided that he didn't want to, they bring up my boots, the footwear, and they're these knee-high, brand new motorcycle boots, Samuel, that are concrete hard and 2 sizes too small. So I got my toes curled up inside these shoes. I got to run along the edge and still clear this goddamn thing below. And I'd been there for 13 hours because the guy was silver and bald. There was all this pre makeup done. And then when the time came, the director was really losing patience. He had 5 cameras on it though. And he said, okay, we got to shoot this sucker. And I was just like, man, Dad was right. I should have stayed in school. And so when he called action, I just said to the guy, hope to see you downstairs. And I just ran as hard as I could, jumped out that window. And Samuel, where I was clearing the railing by about 12 feet on the day, I only cleared it by 3 or 4 on the gag, but I made it into the airbag. The director was over the moon. He said, Brad, that is the greatest stunt I've ever had the honor of filming. And when he edited for the actual episode, Samuel, he did a very strange thing, because you rarely see this. You see the guy run and jump out the window, and you see him run out the window, smash out the window from this angle, smash from this angle, smash from this. He used 4 of the 5 angles and then had the guy land and carry on the story, which kind of breaks with the continuity of the story. But he was that impressed with the gag. He's gone now. His name was Kim Manners. He was just a great, great guy. He was from Missouri, I believe. Just a
Wow.
sweetheart. Anyway.
You know, I can only imagine, like, so when you're about to set off and just before you do the stunt, what kind of is going through your head? Do you feel nervous, anxious, excited?
You're very nervous.
Mm,
You're nervous even on the easiest one because as a professional, you want it to be perfect on the first take.
yeah.
That's what I was always more nervous about doing a good job than I was ever about getting hurt. Because for me, every first take was an audition to continue my career. You know, you have a couple of bad days and the word gets around, you know, so it's like anyway, and you just focus because Samuel, I'm of the impression that Brad Loree can do it, anybody can do it, but I've seen people who when the pressure is on and the high-speed cameras are going and the nervousness, they just kind of close their eyes and throw themselves into the fray and hope for the best. And you can't have people like that. You have to be just like in acting, you have to be cognizant of your moment before, during, and after. You have to do that as a stunt person too. Because after they call cut, there could be falling debris, this, that, everything. You always got to be aware. You always got to be focused until it's absolutely done. And you know, when it came to jumping out that window, I just had to remember that we had rehearsed it. I had to have faith in our rehearsal process. I had to have faith in my coordinator, and I had to have faith in myself. And I even prayed a little bit. I'm not terribly religious, but anyway.
No, absolutely. You know, because like as I'm sure you kind of allude to that. You know, if you're not focused, that's when the really dangerous things happen. And you know, with stunt work, the worst thing could happen to you. So you have to be focused.
Samuel, we have a saying that it's the little ones that bite you. And I was on set years and years ago as an extra, and Kenny was doing a thing. And all he had to do was from about 3 feet up, do a somersault onto his back. And it was a nothing thing. And I'm not saying because it was a nothing thing, but Kenny ended up getting carted off to the hospital in an ambulance.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly what went wrong. I don't even think he did it wrong. It's just that the landing did something. He tweaked his neck or popped something rib. I can't remember, but he got hurt. And, you know, and I've seen that time and time again. It's the little tiny gags because you're not really thinking about on a big gag. You think about everything that could possibly go wrong, forwards and backwards. If you're lazy, you know, it's all I got to do is do this, you know, but, you know, that's when the shit happens, man. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to be focused all the time. It's called being a professional.
Was there ever a moment where you ever had to turn down a stunt, whether it was maybe because of an injury or you just thought this is way too much?
Never turned down a stunt because I tried to talk. I did a stunt on the Chronicles of Riddick where I jumped out of a crane basket from about 20 feet. I jumped out of the basket and literally dove like an animal diving into a tree into the side of a set that was a rocky mountain. This guy had just been thrown out of a spaceship. Okay. And first take, I forget why they wanted to do it a second time. First take, I managed to protect myself bouncing off the wall and then falling down into the pads. But the second take, I didn't protect myself as well, and I scraped the shit out of my right side of my face, tore a bunch of skin off my face, and I landed down there. And the director goes, "Can you make it look a little more violent?" And the cameraman says, "No, we're not doing it again. He did it as violent as he can. Look at his face. We can't go again." But I had to phone another guy that I was supposed to work the next day. And I said, "Look, I just ripped half the skin off my face, you know." And I know guys that would still gone into work, but because, you know, they think makeup will cover it up. But this was more than makeup could cover up. So, but no, I do remember once saying I didn't want to go in for a look-see audition with they wanted a double on a movie called Dungeon Siege for Ron Perlman because he was a weapons guy. And for all my martial arts experience, I wasn't a weapons guy. And I told him that. But the coordinator insisted I go in. And the Chinese stunt team just kind of laughed at me and said, "You're not even as good as the actor." And I said, "Yep, no surprise there." And that's humiliating. But you can only do what you can do in this world, right? And that's hard to
exactly.
do when you're young. Your ego is such that you want to be able to do everything, right? So, but no, I don't remember ever saying no. I don't want to do this stunt. Oh, actually, that's not true. My one buddy tried to hire me for an 80-foot high fall, and Samuel, I was not comfortable with high falls at all because I hadn't done any high fall training. And this particular guy, I did not trust him. I shouldn't say this, but I just wasn't comfortable with him as coordinating me on a stunt that was very dangerous that I had never done before.
Yeah.
So I did say no to that. Also, he told me he didn't have any money to pay me, so that's another reason. If I'm completely honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh wow. So obviously, so you've had a very long career with stunts and acting. Do you think you would ever sort of go back into acting, or maybe try screenwriting or directing? Or do you have any sort of future plans to stay in the industry?
Well, Samuel, I was at one time what they call I was at one time pretty much the #1 stunt actor in Vancouver. Stunt actor is a category that our union created. Actually, Ken was instrumental in that category because what it is, Samuel, for production to hire an actor who's working, say, as a security guard, and he has a couple of lines, and then his character gets shot and falls down hard or goes downstairs or whatever.
Mhm.
It's cheaper for production to hire a stunt guy that can say those 2 or 3 lines and then do the stunt. Stuntman makes a little like 50% more money than he normally would. Production pays less, 50% less than they would for hiring an actor and then hiring a stunt double to double them. And so they have this category stunt actor. And because I had done a lot of acting study when I was younger, so I'd like to get back into that. But I'll tell you, I'm significantly older now, and the business has gotten significantly younger. And young producers, writers, and directors want to see young people in their scripts. It's rare that you get older guys, and of course, with the politically correct environment today, if you're not a one-legged hermaphrodite of color, you have a hard time getting a job. I mean, it's nothing against political correctness. I have a granddaughter who in 10 years is going to want to leave the nest, and I'm hoping the world is a much more compassionate, tolerant place. But I know some actor friends of mine who say they've been auditioning, talented guys have been auditioning all year long and not getting any work. So I don't know what's going to happen that way. I have a gentleman that's got Ken and I read some scripts that it's a horror theme, so we might be able to stay in the horror genre. But Samuel, I don't know what the future holds for old white guys.
No,
Being
that's the
honest,
thing
just
with
being honest. And I mean,
no, of
it is what
course,
it is.
yeah.
I'm not disparaging anybody.
No, absolutely. No, to be honest, you can see the huge change in the industry now, and I think also it comes with maybe not necessarily in stunts, but certainly with acting, it's become so oversaturated now with people, that it's just for one role, whether it's a huge major role or even just like an extra, you still have hundreds, if not thousands, of people auditioning for that one role.
Absolutely. I've got a neighbor just across the hall who has a resume as long as the Great Wall of China. He's worked. He grew up in Montreal and New Jersey, so he's worked in both countries. And he cannot buy a job. He cannot buy a job. He's auditioning 2 or 3 times a week and getting nothing. And but our culture is changing, our society's changing, hopefully for the better. And and if my day's done, then I'll just go back to being an extra. I just love the film industry, and I'm in the union, so I don't have an ego so big that I won't go back to packing my own lunch and sitting with the extras. I got no problem with that.
Something that we briefly sort of touched on off camera was the convention scene. So obviously you're attending a lot of conventions, especially being such an iconic character. What has your general experience been attending like a Comic-Con with the fans?
Well, I'll tell you, my very first convention was in Pasadena. It was one of the Halloween anniversary conventions, and my movie had just come out. I was the new guy on the block. And the first dozen people came up to me, were almost wanting, they were just in my face about how could you let Buster Rhymes beat you up? He's just a goofy martial artist. You're Michael Myers. And I said, dude, it was in the script. I had no say. But today I'm finding that Resurrection is really getting its legs for the very first time. I don't want to say, Samuel, that it was ahead of its time with the text messaging and the cameras everywhere, but that's kind of, it's more contemporary now than ever before. And it didn't get really well received. But when I watched that movie today, I really like it. Forget that I'm in it. I really like it. I think there's I think it's still very suspenseful. It's not overly gory. The kills are all varied. There's a real, diversity there. And I thought the acting was great. The directing was great. And what I'm finding is these young kids that went to see their first Halloween movie as kids 20 years ago and saw Resurrection are now, young adults that have their own money and want to get Brad Loree's autograph. And you're my favorite, Michael, because Resurrection is my favorite movie because it's the first Halloween movie I saw. And I'm just aghast because I'm so, even my agent still teases me about how bad the movie was, but I really like it today. I think the first two, H2O and Resurrection, are as polished a version of the original story that we have. Nothing against the other films, unless you're talking about number 3. No, I love the convention circuit, Samuel. It's a free weekend away. You get to hobnob with the fans, and I find at each convention, I make new friends. I met these guys in Chicago a couple months ago. They made this movie called I don't remember the name now, but they're just the greatest guys. Anyway, I make new friends, see old friends, because I've got friends now from the convention circuit that I've known for like 20 years, almost 20 years. Yeah. And like I said, especially when Ken and I get to go travel together, we always have fun.
Absolutely. And to be honest, when you touched on Halloween Resurrection, I think I've always said, like, as time goes on, people start to appreciate the movie more. And I've said it for so long, because obviously the latest or the final Halloween movies come out, Halloween Ends, and it's kind of got the same, I suppose the same feeling I feel regarding Halloween 3 and Resurrection, where it's maybe not the best received. But I've always said that give it 5 years and people will be talking about as an individual movie. It's actually a very, very good movie.
Yeah, I agree, Samuel. Thanks for that.
No problem. Do you have any particular maybe fan moments, whether they're like emotional or funny, that you kind of remember or have encountered?
Well, that I can talk about?
Yeah.
Samuel, but I'll tell you this. When I first came on the scene, the girls all wanted to know you, and the guys all wanted to say they bought you a drink. So that was a lot of fun. And you guys still get a lot of that. Still get that once in a while. But no, the fans, I'll tell you, again, I don't understand the horror attraction to horror, but the people, just to a person, I haven't met one jerk in that crowd yet. I just think horror fans are terrific people, and I'm just so touched when they tell me they like my performance and that they enjoyed the movie and anything else that I've done. Because as a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I just don't have any natural talent in that area, And it turns out that the nepotism in my life was in the stunt world, which I'm super proud of. I still cannot believe that next year I'm going to be receiving my 25-year lifetime membership belt buckle to the Stunts Canada group, which because they were all gods to me when I was in my early 20s, because Tony was a world champion and he was my hero from the first day I met him. He was just such a super cool guy and just at the same time unbelievably nice and grounded, you know, just a really authentic person. And he was like a big brother to me. And so I know I just love the whole thing. And I talked to Kenny about this, Samuel. As I say, you know, guys like George Wilbur and Dick Warlock are still in demand, and we can, as long as we stay healthy, we could do this for a while yet. You know, I don't know how long the convention scene is going to last, because as I understand, it only started happening in the late 80s or early 90s. I don't know if that's true, but I hope that the horror fans keep wanting to have conventions. I got to get a T-shirt made up and say "I heart horror cons."
To be honest, I think not just horror conventions. I think just in general, the scene is growing so much. I mean, I remember sort of when I first started attending them, even only 10, 12 years ago, they've only maybe, and obviously I live in the UK, so the UK is a very small island, and you know, there only used to be maybe 2 or 3 a year you could go to. Now, just here alone, you can attend one every weekend throughout an entire year.
Are you
There's just
serious?
so much of it now. Yeah, there's so much of it now.
Samuel, you know, there are horror convention whores. There's certain guys that will fly themselves and house themselves just to get a table at shows, and I don't want to name any names. But as best I understand, I feel the same way about the States. You can literally almost go to a convention a weekend, and it always blows my mind when people say, "Brad, would you consider coming to our shows?" Let me see. You're going to pay for my flight and hotel, and let me mingle with the girls and guys, and have a free weekend away. Yeah, I'm good for that. I'm good for that. So I appreciate you saying that. Because there's nothing I get more excited about when Kenny and I get booked to a doubleheader in Europe. And and the guys said that they would have us back next summer. So I'm hoping that happens, because we were supposed to go to Amsterdam, my favorite place in the world, Amsterdam, England, you know. And anyway, hope to see a lot more of England in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be amazing to get to meet you again and to meet Ken again, because you know, you guys are some of the nicest guys. And even if you go on social media after the conventions that you guys have attended, everybody has nothing but positivity to say about both of you. So it'll be great to meet you both again. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Did I get you? Did I sign something for you?
Yes, I do. I have an autograph from you and from Ken that weekend. Yeah, both of you.
Okay, next time, Samuel, we'll get a picture with the three of us.
Absolutely. Yep, I'll hold you to that.
Absolutely, no problem for you. No problem, man.
So just sort of the final thing I wanted to ask, for it doesn't have to be in stunt, it could be in any avenue somebody may be listening to this. If they really want to push to do something that they've always dreamed about doing, or you know, something they want to achieve, do you have any advice that maybe you could give people who are trying to achieve something that they've sort of dreamed about?
Well, I would say to find your purpose in life. I used to scoff at that when I read, you know, everyone says the most, you know, Dwayne Dyer and all these guys. The most important thing, Deepak Chopra, the most important thing is find your purpose in life. But after sitting around for 13 years with nothing, no real purpose and nothing to do, it almost killed me, I have to admit. And I would tell you, find your passion, find what you love to do. And they say the money will come. It may or may not, but here's the thing. Doing what you love to do is worth trillions. And if you pay attention to the material and monetary things that come to you in life, if you pay attention to how quickly the shine goes off them, I mean, you don't want to have to live on the streets. You got to make a living. It's, you know, the monetary system's a necessary evil, but I really believe that the person who experiences the most love at the end of their life is the winner. Because you can't take money, you can't take your house, you can't take your Ferrari with you. But if you love waking up to a rainy day, a beautiful day, if you appreciate, you know, a good meal, if you love the people in your life, and don't waste time with people, no matter who they are, that are bringing negative, negative atmosphere into your environment. Yeah, just follow your heart and be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. I mean, I don't know if you know the story of Bronnie Ware, the woman that wrote The 5 Regrets of the Dying.
I'm not too sure, to be honest.
She's an Australian palliative carrier. She may still be, but she wrote this article after 13 years of holding the hands of people and listening to the stories of people that were dying were in the last few months of their life. She wrote this article for the local newspaper. Well, it got picked up by United Press and went all over the world and got syndicated and got so much press, Samuel, that she ended up writing a book on it about the 5 regrets of the dying. But the number one regret by far and away of people as they're looking back on their life is, I wish I'd lived a life truer to myself rather than the life expected of me by others. In other words, be honest with yourself so you can be honest with the cosmos. Don't worry about pleasing everybody. You're not going to please everybody. You're not going to make everybody like and love you. So like and love yourself. And what the rest of the people think, be damned. That doesn't mean being a prick. But the thing about our society today, you look like an asshole if you're not, if you speak your mind and you're honest. Oh no, you can't say that. You have to say the nice thing. You have to say the politically correct thing. Don't be honest. Let's all be liars and then we'll all get along. I don't understand that at all. I was raised as a very young man to never tell a lie. And I remember as a little boy in school, I didn't completely know a lot about Gandhi. What I did know about him was that he was deserving of a lot of respect. And I remember reading that one of his books was entitled "My Experiments with Truth." So another one of my idols, besides my father, emphasized the importance of truth and honesty. So that's what I like to tell myself I'm about. And I'm not perfect, but I could be lying right now, Samuel. Okay. I just wish everybody well. I hope we stay safe, and I hope to see you again one day. And man, I really appreciate it. Again, I apologize about yesterday. And just make sure you've gotten all your questions, Sam, because like I said, I've got all day.
No, yeah, honestly, that's that's perfect. As I said, we obviously a big part I wanted to talk to you about was stunt work and Halloween Resurrection, primarily because, like I said, the viewers we have are very, very much part of the horror community. So I always get requests all the time from people like yourself.
All right, I appreciate that.
But yeah, Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you.
Samuel, it's great to see you again. I hope to see you again, and you have a great day, and take care of yourself, mate. Cheers.